the real vocal range classification. Now, a lot of you might have heard of this term many different times. Terms like tenor, baritone, bass, soprano, alto. You see, I personally don't really like to use those terms, because if you want to understand this, the reason why these terms are even invented in the first place is because back then, when it comes to classical singing or classical choir singing, what happens is, in order to give different singers their respective parts, to assign them to what their vocal range, their most natural vocal range, because the vocal classification in terms of being a tenor, baritone, soprano, alto, those kind of classification, it is used in a choir to help ensure that each singer gets their part such that their voice in their range is the most natural. So for example, a tenor's vocal range, its most natural vocal range will be somewhere in the 4th octave, and a baritone, it might be the 2nd or the 3rd octave. Does that make sense so far? And if you haven't watched my video on can low voices sing high notes, I'll put a video in the cards. Go ahead and check that one out after you're done with this video. Because look, I personally hate to use the words tenor, baritone, soprano, whatsoever. And the reason is because they can be very misleading words that cause us singers to put ourselves in a box. What do I mean? Because most of the time, this is not too much of an issue for tenors and sopranos, but this is more of an issue for specifically the low voices, the true baritone and basses, and also another type of singers, which I'm going to call the tenors stuck in a low placement. Why do I say so? Look, when it comes to baritone and basses, here's the problem. Because baritone and basses, they are labeled to have low voices. As a result, what most baritone and basses tend to do is they don't even bother singing those high notes. But here's the challenge. A lot of baritone and bass singers, they want to be able to sing pop songs. But the challenge is, most pop songs, they are sang in a tenor's range. So if I'm a bass or baritone and I want to sing pop songs, then I'm or if I'm an alto or I'm a mezzo-soprano and I want to sing soprano songs, I want to sing Ariana Grande songs, I want to sing Lady Gaga songs, I don't know. But is that really true? You see, what's interesting is this. A lot of basses and baritone and a lot of mezzo-sopranos and altos, they can sing really high as well. Just take a look at all these examples.
You can say what you like, don't say I wouldn't die for it.
So you can see all those singers, they are baritones or altos and mezzo-sopranos. But why can they sing those powerful high notes? Why can they sing those high notes so beautifully? Once again, I've explained all this in my other video. But in this video, my focus here is this. Because of a kind of limiting beliefs that puts most struggling baritone and bass singers in a box, I hate to use those words. And that is why today, I'm going to show you a new way of vocal range classification. The way I believe that the voice should be classified when it comes to pop singing. Because in pop singing, no matter what, we have to hit those high notes. It's a matter of how high are those high notes. It could be Bruno Mars kind of high, up to C5, E5. Or it could be Dimash kind of high, up to the 6th octave. Or it could be maybe like James Arthur, Harry Styles kind of high, up to G4, A4, B flat, B. All those are all high notes. Because as long as you're singing pop, no matter how low your voice is, you have to at least master up to G4, G4 sharp, A4 in your full voice as a guy. And for the ladies, you have to do it up to C5, C5 sharp, D5. And if you've watched my other video, you'll also realize that most of the time, basses, baritones, altos, mezzo-sopranos, you can actually sing higher than what you think you can. Because once you have accessed your high complete mixed voice vocal placement. It really doesn't matter what voice type you think you are going to be able to access those high notes. Now, here's the way I look at vocal range classification. On this side, we have 0, and on this side, we have 10. 0 is a number to indicate a low note, and 10 is a number to indicate a high note. I'm not going to give you any specific notes here, but if we really want a reference, we can say that for guys, 0 could be a C2 or even lower in the first octave, and 10 for a guy could be somewhere beyond E5 in the 5th octave and even up to the 6th octave. And for the ladies, 0 could be a C3 or maybe lower down in the 2nd octave, and a 10 could be anywhere in the second half of the 5th octave. That means G5 and beyond, and into the 6th octave, maybe even up to the 7th octave. Now that we've gotten this clear, why am I using a numbering system here? Because ultimately, I realized that usually there are 3 types of people. The 3 types of vocal classifications. The first type is more of a singer who have a voice like James Arthur or Louis Capaldi or Harry Styles for the guys. And for ladies, we have someone like Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus with those low voices. Now, these are the people that I'll say their vocal range will be somewhere from a 0 to a 7. 7 for a guy could be a C5, and for a lady, it might be a E5. Now with these type of singers, they usually have no problem hitting high notes. Because let's face it, C5 for a guy is high, and E5 for ladies is high as well. They have no problem hitting those high notes. And at the same time, they can sing very, very low. They are just like basses, baritone, altos, mezzo-sopranos. However, they usually don't show off their low range simply because in pop songs, the more expressive nature of pop songs, usually we use more of high notes as an expressive factor rather than low notes. Now, with these singers, the advantage that they have is this. Usually the reason why they can sing so low and yet so high is because they have a thick pair of vocal cords, which means the thickness of it allows them to bring more weight through their passaggio, which means that, for example, if a singer like James Arthur or Louis Capaldi or Harry Styles, when they are singing a G4, a G4 sharp, or A4, their mixed voice will usually sound more chesty than what Bruno Mars can achieve, what Shawn Mendes can achieve. Does that make sense? Whereas for a lady, Taylor Swift and Miley Cyrus, they usually have a chestier sounding mixed voice than, let's say, Ariana Grande. Does that also make sense? Now, if you understand this is this singer's advantage. The disadvantage is this. Most singers who are like this, but they are struggling, they will forever not be able to sing past their vocal break simply because of 2 factors. Number 1, they are led to believe that they have low voices and hence they can't sing high. Number 2, they haven't accessed their high complete mixed voice vocal placement. But here's the good news. Once these singers are well trained, singers like James Arthur, Louis Capaldi, Harry Styles, Miley Cyrus, Taylor Swift, once they're well trained, guess what? They are quite f***ing invisible because they have those very powerful high chest voice that can convey a certain level of pain in their emotions. This is why people always say things like when James Arthur sing, when Louis Capaldi sing, their voice carries along a certain level of pain. And what they are really referring to is the chestiness, the chest resonance that their thicker vocal cords naturally provide them with as they sing higher into their passaggio. Does that make sense? Because those guys and girls, those guys and ladies, they can sing high notes perfectly. One disadvantage is they might probably never sing as high as singers like Bruno Mars or Dimash. But so what? The truth is this, you don't have to sing so high. Most pop songs, they don't go so high. Does that make sense? I'll say for a guy, 90% of the pop songs that you want to sing, the highest note on a mixed voice, on a belt voice, is a C5 at best. Going beyond C5 is that top 10, is that 10% of the songs. Bruno Mars songs, In fact, even less than that if you ask me, that you have to sing your mixed voice. And for ladies, it is E5 and beyond. E5, F5, F5 sharp, G5. Ariana Grande maybe goes there. And some other crazy high female singers, they go there, but most of the time, if you're singing like Taylor Swift songs, you don't have to go so high. And you still sound nice, you're still singing the original key. Does that make sense? So this group of people, they really have this advantage. Now, the second group of people, I would say they are more of from 3 to 10. Actually more of 3 up to 8, 9, 10. What do I mean? So this group of people, they could be singers like Bruno Mars, Shawn Mendes, Adam Levine, Ryan Tedder. And for the ladies, we have Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato, Sia, and a lot of other female singers. Now, this group of singers, we usually don't really hear them sing really low notes, and they usually sing very high. For those guys, they usually sing up to C5, if not even beyond, up to E5 in their mixed voice. And for the ladies, they usually sing up to E5 in their songs and beyond to F5, F5 sharp, G5. For this group of singers, why do I say that they are from 3 to 8, 9, 10? Because the truth is, we don't hear Bruno Mars or Shawn Mendes or any of those male singers. We don't hear them whistle. Does that make sense? We don't know whether is it because they don't have a whistle register or they are simply choosing not to use it. But either way, the point that I'm trying to get across is here. These group of singers, they usually can sing very high. They are what we traditionally call them as a tenors and a sopranos. The disadvantage is their low range, their very low range are usually missing. For those guys, like Bruno Mars, Shawn Mendes, those guys, their low notes can go maybe down to a A2, G2, F2 at most, and that's it. But once again, it is not a problem for them. Why? Because pop songs, you don't have to go so low. Usually, most of the time. So the best part about the first two groups of singers is, as long as you're concerned with singing pop songs, you're not doing any crazy acrobatic things with your voice, you have more than enough vocal range. That's the truth. And most of us, once we have fully developed our potential, will be either the first type or the second type, which either way is pretty damn good because you can sing almost everything that you want to sing. And hence why I think this classification is way better is because it then tells you that you're always competing with your potential. Whatever I've told you so far is the maximum potential. Is those singers who are already famous, who are already banging it and winning Grammy awards. I'm talking about those singers. Most of us, what we tend to realize is usually we are like maybe 3 to, if you are a tenor or if you're a soprano, you have higher voices, you are from a 3 to a 6, 7. Your high range can go even higher, but you haven't accessed your high complete mixed voice vocal placement. Or if you have lower voices, you probably have 0 or 1 to begin with, and then maybe now you're up to a 5 or maybe even just a 4 at the current level, and you know that with today's video, you understand that you can actually reach 5, 6 and 7 with practice. Because when you're able to look at a voice this way, then you realize that you're no longer fixed in a sense that because you're a baritone, because you're a bass, because you're alto, because you're a soprano, you can't sing high notes. It is absolutely nonsense. Now, the last type of people, the third type, you might have guessed it by now. Those are the more crazy and the insane type of singers. Singers like Dimash. Dimash is a 0 to 10. What do I mean? Dimash can hit really low notes that basses usually sing in, and yet he can sing up so high, even whistle like it's eating breakfast. Those are the rare breed of singers who have everything. They have like really huge range of vocal range. Another example, in fact, a famous vocal coach, his name is Brett Manning. If you have been following his work, you might know him. He has this 5-octave vocal range as a guy. Very rare. He is another one from 0 to 10. He have like everything in between. Usually, these kind of singers, they are talented to a certain level. Biologically speaking, when they are born, they are gifted with a set of vocal cords that can actually reach the extremes, both extremes. Whereas most of us, we can only work towards one extreme, and our other extreme, biologically, our vocal cords just doesn't allow us to go anywhere near there. Does that make sense? Now, to sum this all up, Usually, how do you determine which type are you? Especially if right now you are still a struggling singer, you haven't accessed your high complete mixed voice vocal placement, and you are curious like, how do I know which type am I if right now I'm not at my fullest potential? How do I know what would my potential be? Here's a very simple solution to it. The way I look at it is this. I usually don't look at a singer's, a developing singer's high notes. I usually look at their low notes, because we all know this. Usually your low notes, they're kind of fixed. Even if you try to expand your low range, you could at most expand it by 1, 2, 3 notes for most people, and that is why it's more reliable. Whereas your upper range, if you have access to a high placement, you can even increase one octave, and that wouldn't be surprising at all. And that is why I like to look at a low range, because a lower limit is a more accurate representation of your possible potential. Does that make sense? So for example, if the lowest note you can sing as a guy is up to C, is all the way down to C2 or even lower into the first octave, then most likely you are either type 1 or you're type 3. And with training and accessing your high placement, you understand and you will figure out with time whether you are type 1 or you're type 3. Now, for ladies, if you can sing up down to C3 and beyond into a second octave, most likely you are either type 1 or type 3 as well. Now, if let's say you are a guy now and you can sing down to A2, G2, and that's your limit, then most likely you're the second type. There is just no way you can be the first or the third type, because to be the first or the third type, you need to have really low notes down to C2, D2, even down to the first octave for the guys. And for ladies, if singing a C3 it feels difficult for you, chances are you're most likely more like an Ariana Grande at your fullest potential. You're most likely going to be the second type, which is a very clear-cut case. So look, just by looking at your low notes, it gives you a good understanding of what your future, of what your potential could possibly be. And why is knowing your potential so important? Because it gives you the light at the end of the tunnel. And if you can understand my way of vocal classifications when it comes to singing pop songs, then you realize that even as a baritone, as a bass, as a mezzo-soprano, as an alto, you can still sing high notes very well. In fact, sing even chestier sounding high notes that some tenors and sopranos that they can achieve with their natural biology, with their natural vocal cords. Does that make sense? That's why usually I say this. Most people, they simply don't realize that they have those high range. It is not because they don't have it. It is just because they have not learned how to access those high notes. It's like right now, imagine maybe 10 feet underneath your house, there's treasure box that is like 1,000 years old. You wouldn't know that it exists because no one told you it is underneath, or you have no idea how to reach there. Does that make sense? But if someone told you that you can and show you the method to accessing that treasure box, would you go and do it? Of course, right? The point of this video is to alert you that if you actually can access your high complete mixed voice vocal placement, guess what? Those high notes that you are currently missing, they are actually not missing because biologically you can't go there, but rather because you simply haven't found a way to access those high notes. Because guess what? I'm a tenor, but in the past I used to be a tenor stuck with a low placement. So if you're a tenor stuck with a low placement, you realize that you can't sing very low, which means I myself, I'm a second type. I can't sing very low, but at the same time, if you're a tenor stuck in a low placement, you realize that, well, you can't sing very low, you can't sing very high either. Then what kind of weird vocal type are you? You can't sing high, you can't sing low. What? Which is not true. The truth is just this. Back then, I couldn't sing a mixed voice past D4, even C4 sometimes. The moment I reach C4 sharp, I feel like switching to a falsetto or head voice. And I couldn't just stay in a mixed voice and bring that up all the way to C5. And what's interesting is in the past 1 year, I've learned to take my mixed voice from C4 up to C5, which is one entire octave. Most people will think that how is it even possible? Like how? Just how is that possible? Well, the magic simply lies in the high complete mixed voice vocal placement. People who understand the placement and people who actually apply this placement, they usually see incredible results. But people who don't know how to access their high placements, people who usually practice a lot, but they practice in their low placement, like what I've been doing for the first 3 years of my singing journey, you realize that no matter how much you're practicing, you are not going to see any improvement. You're not going to see any results. You might even get worse. If you haven't seen my singing transformation, go ahead, click the link in the cards and watch that. Hey, I've got to go now, and I'll catch you in another video.